Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the AHDB webinar this evening, which is all about mental health awareness and how far have we actually come with this issue. So just a little bit of housekeeping to get you started. All of you as attendees are on mute this evening. And if you have any questions for us, then please do just type in the questions on your screen, and then they'll pop up on my screen and we'll be able to ask the presenters anything that you need to know. We're going to look at answering questions as we go through the slides, so please put them in as we go along. If we haven't got time, we've got some time towards the end as well. We won't be asking anybody any names, and we won't be mentioning names when we go through the questions, so please do feel free to ask anything. It's completely confidential. Nobody knows who else is on this call. And what we're aiming to do is talk for about 45 minutes, have the questions, and then we'll look to wrap up about 8 p.m. Unless there's absolutely loads of questions for us to go through. So just a few introductions for who you're hearing from today. There's myself, Tess Howe, who is the Senior Skills Manager at AHDB. Will, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Will Evans, a beef and arable farmer from North East Wales, also the host of Rock and Roll Farming podcast, do various other bits of media things as well.
Thank you. Aaron?
Hi there, yeah, my name's Aarun Naik. I'm not a farmer like Will, but I did spend a good chunk of my career working in the wider farming industry. These days I work as a counsellor and psychotherapist, so I have a particular interest in rural mental health.
And Aaron, the Strong Heart logo that we've got at the bottom of the screen, that's the company that you work for?
Well, oh yeah, that's the logo for my company, my website. Yes, so I offer individual counselling and also provide different forms of training to groups and organisations.
Brilliant. And Susie?
Hi, I'm Susie Dealey. I'm Corporate Partnership Manager for RABI, also a farmer's daughter and living on the farm in Oxfordshire.
Fantastic. So we're going to start this presentation with mental health awareness and is it really improving? So we know that there's lots of initiatives out there at the moment. There's Farmwell Wales, there's the Mind You Ahead from Yellow Wellies, which will be starting on the 15th of February for the 4th year. Share the Load is about to celebrate its 3rd anniversary, and we've got all those interesting facts from Jana about the suicide awareness as well. And there's the directory of services for everything that's out there to support. But from your Nuffield experience in 2016, Aaron, do you think that we have seen a lot of awareness change in this industry specifically?
Yeah, well, that's really interesting. As you say, I got an opportunity to look at this topic because I was awarded a Nuffield Farming Scholarship in 2016, and that's several years ago now. And while, you know, in those years, the landscape seems to have changed a lot. Obviously, none of the pressures have gone away. In fact, obviously, there's a lot of new pressures that have come to the fore. But when it comes to the issue of mental health, what we've really seen is a real appetite to begin to talk about it, to address it, to confront it. We're seeing a real conversation about mental health in farming now, lots of highlighting of the issue in the farming media. And whereas one time it was mostly a lot of the farming support groups talking about the issue, we're now seeing major organizations and farming leaders involved. AHDB weren't talking about this topic really when I started looking at it 5-6 years ago. I worked for the NFU for 10 years. During that time, I hardly heard the topic mentioned. They're now talking about it a lot. And you have campaigns, as you mentioned there, like the Mind Your Head campaign by the Farm Safety Foundation. That's been going for 4 years now. And that's really helping to raise awareness. So I really think we're starting to see this conversation, not just about mental health and depression and problems with suicide, but much more broadly about how we take care of ourselves and our well-being. And there's various initiatives and organizations providing help and support that you've highlighted there on the screen. And in fact, in the center, that National Directory of Rural Support Groups, that contains, and really that typifies all the support that's out there. That contains the details of all those organizations providing services, providing support. So I don't want to somehow portray that everything is wonderful now. There's still huge challenges, but I think it's important to recognize that in the last 5 years, we've really made positive strides in addressing this issue, beginning to address this issue rather, and having a conversation about it. And us being here tonight with the audience here talking about it, I suppose also typifies that.
And Will, what have you found sort of within the industry, so to speak? How do you find the awareness is?
Oh, I mean, as Aaron's already said, the changes over the last, I think, 4 or 5 years have been quite remarkable. So mental health has always been, I guess, talked about in farming, but previously always in quite hushed tones. So, you know, as someone who's very ensconced in the farming community, you know, most of my family are in branches of farming somehow or another. You're always, you know, I've always been aware of people who've had mental health problems, but usually until sort of fairly recently, you know, people would talk about it in quite hushed tones. It would be things like, oh, you know, so and so, you know, they're having problems with their nerves, or some kind of absurd phrase like that. And it's always been there, but the way that people have started talking about it over the last few years and getting it into the open, I think it is absolutely incredible. And as Aaron said, it doesn't mean to say we're there yet. There's a really long way to go, but just the fact that we're having this conversation tonight, there's so many people on the webinar. The NFU Oxford Farming Conference did a fantastic video last year, and I would urge anyone watching to check that out on their YouTube channel. And again, they talked about it this year at the conference. You know, the more those organisations in farming talk about it, I mean, I should have mentioned the farming press as well, Farmers Weekly, Farmers Guardian, they've ran campaigns. You know, the more we talk about it, the more we normalise it, and it just becomes something that people realise, yeah, I'm not on my own with this. And I think that is the most important thing. So yes, long answer, but the way it's changed over the last few years, I think genuinely has been quite something.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And as someone's pointed out in the questions already, it is Blue Monday today, which is it's not a coincidence that we're running this webinar tonight with that. But and someone else is already asking as well, how many people are on tonight? Well, really pleased to say we've got nearly 200 people signed in already, and we know that through experience that sort of creeps up over the evening as well. So a really well attended webinar, and it's available as a recording as well for anybody that can't make it, if you want to pass it on to anybody over the course of the next few months or so. So it's reasonable to expect the audience that they've either had some mental health problems in the past, or you want to help somebody else. And one of the problems that we find is actually just talking about it. We all, if we had an illness, if we broke a leg, we'd be talking about that happily. But when it comes to mental health, there just seems to be that blocker, doesn't there, about what we actually say and how we talk about it openly. And I'm really pleased to say tonight that Will's going to talk about his own personal story with you all and share what he's been through over the past few years. So I'm going to hand over to you, Will.
Yeah, thanks, Tess. Yeah, so just sort of before I start, I am still, although I'm really happy to talk about it, I'm still kind of coming to terms with it all a bit, and I think that might take me several years to do so. So please forgive me if my thoughts are a bit disjointed while I try to explain. So I've always had a lot of empathy for those who've had problems with mental health. And as I said earlier, being so much part of the farming community, I'm aware that it's always been around. And I've always kind of thought, well, you know, that must be terrible to be stuck in that situation, you know, to feel so alone. And we know that can obviously, it can be caused by lots of things, can be caused by a particular event like relationship breakdown or financial pressure or loss of a loved one or something like that. But that wasn't the case with me at all. Very much sort of crept up on me, and I think on reflection probably did over a number of years. You know, I've always perhaps been a bit up and down. Always kind of put that down to a bit of Celtic melancholy or Churchill's black dog, whatever you want to call it, but I've never sort of had any form of depression. So going back to the start of 2019, the weather was appalling, really difficult weather. We farm in the bottom of a river valley, 2 farms. The River Dee runs through the middle, so we've always had floods. You know, we're used to flooding, but with the way the climate is changing, we're dealing with that a lot more over the last few years. We'd had a lot of flooding that spring. I think I'd probably taken on far too many things. Busy with the farm, busy with family. I have four young daughters. A few years ago, I started the podcast. I started getting involved in kind of wider industry things. The podcast, although I love doing it, it's been amazing. I've met so many brilliant people, experienced so many different things. As a result of it, it does take up a lot of my time. I end up doing working very late at night sometimes. You know, I'm not doing any less on the farm because I'm doing all that stuff. I'm doing that all early morning or late at night. The harvest was very late. We had, I mean, you know, we've had wet harvests and difficult things before. So I guess this is the thing with depression, it causes you to lose perspective. But I guess I was, looking back now, I guess I was probably experiencing burnout, physically, mentally tired. I was really worried about the harvest. I was worrying over lots of stupid things that were way beyond my control. You know, I'd find myself lying in bed at night worrying about things that were happening with Brexit, or I think I've always probably had quite a strong, or I think I've had quite a strong social conscience. So, you know, I was watching the news and things were dreadfully upsetting me. So I remember seeing a report on some children, refugee children who'd been drowned. And I remember I just couldn't stop thinking about it. I just remember sort of lying in bed thinking what a terrible world we live in. And, you know, and these things have always happened, but I don't know, I just, something had switched and I couldn't stop thinking about them. And then I knew that I wasn't myself. I was on the tractor a lot. The weather being so bad, I was constantly beating myself up for having to work so many long hours, not seeing the kids. You know, I try my best to be a good dad, and I love spending time with my kids. And I felt like, you know, I hadn't seen them for weeks, and then I was feeling guilty that the burden of looking after the kids was all falling on my wife. So I was feeling like a bad husband. I felt like I wasn't a good enough farmer. And although I don't think I'm the best farmer in the world, I do have a lot of pride in what we do here. And I felt like I was kind of letting the farm down. When I was doing other stuff, other industry things and things with the podcast, I kept thinking, well, I should be on the farm. I should be harvesting now. I should be doing other things. And I just felt like wherever I turned, I was letting somebody down. So even the podcast, I felt like, you know, and I get quite a lot of listeners to it and people seem to enjoy it. I get lots of nice messages every week, and I felt like I wasn't doing that well enough. I felt like I didn't have enough time, so I was kind of having to do it all very last minute. And so then I started to think that I was letting listeners down. And I just felt like everywhere I turned, I was letting somebody close to me down. And you know, I am someone who I think likes to make people happy, you know, especially the people around me. So it all kind of built up, the pressure of the flooding, and you know, the reason there's the picture of the tractor stuck there. You know, when we were trying to get maize off, it was just a nightmare. we've grown maize for 25 years and never had problems like that before. It was, I felt like even though there wasn't anything I could do about that, the river had flooded, it had flooded the field, flooded the maize, and then we let it dry as long as we could, but it was then forecast to flood again, so we made the decision to get it off. But you know, the field just looked dreadful afterwards. I was standing looking at the field, and I was pretty much in tears, because you know, we worked very hard on soil structure and to improve the soil, and I was just, again, you know, those things have happened before, but it just massively affected me more than it had ever had. I also made the mistake of putting that picture on social media, because I feel like, you know, you should always try and, if you're going to show the good things that you do on your farm, you should also show the bad. And a lot of people kind of, I suppose I was also aware that a lot of other people were struggling to get maize off, so I kind of thought, well, if I put that picture on, then they'll know they're not the only one. But you know, a lot of people kind of jumped on it and, you know, pretty much told me I was a terrible farmer and things like that, which at that time, when I was probably at my lowest, wasn't ideal. So I'd be a lot more careful about things I put on social media now. And it all kind of culminated, and eventually I just completely broke down. I started having extreme panic attacks. So the first time it happened, I was actually bringing straw back. I was on the load of straw behind me early hours of the morning. I was trying to get straw in before it rained, and on quite a busy road, and I thought I was having a heart attack. I had to pull over. I honestly thought I was having a heart attack around my dad. Didn't know what was happening to me, and you know, obviously later found out that was a panic attack. And then they happened quite a lot. You know, relatively small things would trigger those, especially when I felt, again, you know, when I felt like I was letting someone down. That happened a lot. So you know, I just felt like I was being pulled in every direction. I felt like a fake, like a fraud, like I was supposed to be this. I was supposed to have everything together, but I was failing at everything. You know, even in the meal times. So meal times in our house are pretty raucous, with 4 daughters aged between 5 and 10. You know, if we're not laughing and telling jokes, you know, the kids are arguing, or there's drinks being spilled or whatever. And usually I like to think I'm a pretty fun dad. I spend a lot of time making the kids laugh and doing stupid things like all dads do. But at that time, I felt like I was there, but I can picture it now. I was sat at the end of the table, and the kids were all laughing and joking, and I felt like, and much more eloquent people than me would have talked about depression, but I felt like I was there, but I wasn't there. I felt like a shadow, and I couldn't engage, although I wanted to. I knew that I was letting them down because I should be laughing and joking with them. I just couldn't. And it ended up, and this almost it sounds ridiculous to me now, and it almost feels as if I'm talking about someone else, but I felt like when I was at my lowest that my family would be better off without me. And that is quite hard to admit, because now, you know, clearly they wouldn't be, but that's how I felt. So, you know, I have got through it, and I will talk about a bit more about that shortly, but it was without a doubt the hardest thing I've ever been through, because I had no experience with it. It took me completely by surprise. So my family convinced me to go to a GP eventually. Of course, like all farmers and men especially, I suppose, I resisted it for a while. I thought I would get through it and I'd be okay, but or I was too busy to go, or something stupid like that. But eventually I went. Remember sitting in the waiting room waiting to be called through and just thinking, what am I doing here? I'm wasting everyone's time. this is stupid, it's just all in my head. And then I walked through the door into the doctor's office, room, whatever you call it, and I just instantly burst into tears. And I'm not a big, I was going to say I'm not a big crier. I tend to cry happy tears, quite emotional, but it takes a lot. You know, I wouldn't be one to sort of cry that easily with things like that, but I just burst into tears. And I think going to the doctor's like that was probably the hardest thing I've ever done. But the doctor was amazing. She was just fabulous. Can't speak highly enough. Put me on antidepressants, quite strong antidepressants. I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And antidepressants took quite a while to kick in, but they did, and I think they helped. And I was on them for nearly a year. I remember walking out there, and I was very relieved in a way, because I was diagnosed with something, so I knew I wasn't just being stupid. It wasn't in my imagination. But I also felt, at the same time as feeling relieved, I also felt, I thought, is this it now? Am I depressive? Is this going to define me? You know, is this me now for the rest of my life? But now I see, of course, now I'm better and I'm fine and I've gone through it. That taking antidepressants or going to the doctors for mental health is absolutely no different than going for physical health. It's no different than going to get antibiotics or something like that. And I hope I will never have to go on them again. I have no intention of doing so, but if I have to, then I will. I'm very fortunate to have a fantastic support network around me that probably got me through it just as much as the antidepressants, and I recognise that I'm very fortunate with that. But you know, I'm pleased to say that I am still here, and I did get through it. So and I'll talk about that a bit again shortly. But yeah, I think that's, sorry, I've probably rambled on a bit long, but that's kind of it, I think.
It's not a ramble, Will, and we've had a number of comments about how brave and emotional that is, and how powerful it is with what you're saying. So thank you very much for sharing with us. And I'm just going to give you a minute to catch your breath and have a glass of that wine. A gulp of that wine, not a whole glass just yet, sorry. But Aaron, we've had a couple of questions, and sort of from the professional side of things, how do we get people to slow down and stop in those kind of situations where things are just tumbling out of control, and actually none of it's in your control anyway in a lot of circumstances? How do we get people to slow down and recognize what's happening to them before it's too late?
Yeah, I think part of that is about educating ourselves and becoming a bit more aware of recognizing the signs in ourselves of when that's happening and when we're heading into that place, so that we can take action like Will was able to do there. And I second what you say. I mean, it was so brave of him to come on and be so real and be so authentic and transparent in sharing his story there. And I'm so happy that he got the help that he needed, and that he's here to talk about that and inspire everybody.
I think I'm just looking through the questions there, Will, and it's just all support for you on how people can recognise what you're talking about. And I think that another one which is really about when you see that change in somebody else as well. And Aaron, maybe that's something you could cover, or Will, from your perspective. You see that change and you know what's happening to them, but they can't necessarily see the route they're going down. How do you help them without really ruining the relationship or putting extra pressure on that as well? I don't know, to either of you really.
Do you want me to? Yeah.
Go ahead, Will.
Yeah. So I should have said as well that picture of the tree. That is a tree that was on our fields, and that was a guy from the village with a drone took that after the flooding, and I just thought it was a very good. It was a very good visual representation of how I felt at the time. Yeah, it is really hard for the people around you. You know, you feel I know we're going to go on to talk a bit about sort of that feeling of guilt, but I felt immensely guilty for putting my family through that at the time. So I think it was very difficult for them to see me going through that, and to try and get through, to get through to me. I was so, I felt so, people who know me will know I'm pretty outgoing. I don't think take things too seriously. Even if you follow me on social media or something, you'll know that. I like making people laugh. I'm a bit of a class clown, which I'm aware of. But my whole personality changed. So, for them to see that, I think was really difficult, and it was very hard for my parents. So, my wife and kids as well, but my parents, obviously, I'm their only son. There's only us on the farm in partnership with just mum and dad. I think it was really hard for them, and they in particular, I think they found it very hard to get through to me. They didn't know what to say. I mean, my dad is 1970s kind of generation. He didn't know what to say. He traditionally has always had that, like, I don't want to pigeonhole, but that generation perhaps a bit more would have the kind of get on with it attitude. And I don't know, I think it was very difficult for them to find the right words, and I felt very guilty for putting them through that. But yeah, that's yeah. Perhaps Aaron, you'd like to carry on.
Yes. So I mean, that is a common feeling, that feeling of guilt, and the sense that you are somehow a burden for having the experience that you're having when it wasn't really your fault there, Will. I think some of the signs that you talked about, how you weren't yourself, your humor had gone, the physical signs, the panic attacks that you were having, all signs that you, as you were saying, were heading towards some kind of burnout.
There's a common theme in some of the comments that are coming through, and it is quite synonymous with the agricultural industry about us working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we all feel, I think, especially when things get a bit hard, we throw ourselves back into our work and keep ourselves busy, don't we? So we don't have to deal with things. And I think it's stopping that and making that okay in our industry. And it's almost bragging rights for a lot of farmers, isn't it? They've done their 80 hours a week, and there'll be periods where we have to do that, and that's part of what we work in, but it doesn't have to be continuous. And I think any way we can get industry to understand that actually time out for ourselves will make us more productive and make us better and safer as an industry as well. But I really don't know how we go about that. It's so ingrained, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is, and you see it a lot, don't you? Like if you're going on holiday or something like that, people will say, "Oh, you must not have enough work to do," or I do various other bits as I've said, and I've had comments about that, like as if I shouldn't be doing other things. I should just be farming. And even I do a fair bit of running, as we're going to go on to talk about. You get things like, well, you can't be working hard enough if you've got energy to run at night. And it's so, I mean, things like that are quite commonplace as well. That's not unusual to get those comments, and it's so it's quite sad, really, that people think in that way. I think I guess it's not just, wouldn't just be agriculture. I guess it's probably the same in fishing or construction or haulage or any of those kind of industries. I mean, I'd be interested to ask Aaron, actually, if you've sort of done any work, or whether there's anything that we can learn from those industries, or are they looking at us and, are they saying, well, look how much agriculture has come on in the last few years?
I think this this idea of hard work is very much something that's endemic to it. Is very much valued within farming, that we have to work hard, and sometimes it's almost, as you say, seen as a competition about who can work the most hours. And I think it's about a cultural and behavioural change that's going to take time. About actually, do we value ourselves? What is the importance of actually having some work-life balance? And that needs to also be part of this conversation. Some of the unsustainable working hours and the impact that that's going to have on our mental health and our well-being. It's a really important point that you make.
I'm going to move on now. I mean, there's some really great points, and I think afterwards, then maybe the five of us will have a chat about how we can really address some of the other points that are coming through as well, because we can't cover everything this evening, unfortunately. But we move on to the next point: isolation and loneliness. And there's an image here that's some really good work that was done in Ireland about looking at that single person household and loneliness and isolation in Ireland, and it comes up unsurprisingly as those rural areas. But Aaron, what do you describe isolation and loneliness as? Because it's not always just when we're by ourselves, is it?
Yeah, I suppose isolation we can define as the absence of social contact. And that's different for everybody. Some people are perfectly fine having, just a few friends and enjoy spending quite a bit of time alone. For other people, those same scenarios would cause them to feel a lot of sense of isolation and loneliness. I think loneliness is, really about a feeling, and that's going to be different for everyone. And sometimes just being around other people isn't enough. I mean, you can be in the company of people, in the same room with people, and still feel alone, because being in the same room, being with people, isn't the same as actually feeling connected. And also, when we're struggling with our mental health or conditions such as depression, it's common to have these feelings of loneliness and to feel alone, no matter how many people we have around us. And it can be difficult to understand, how can I possibly feel so lonely in a room filled with the people that are close to me or the people that I love? So it's not as simple as just about being isolated equals being lonely. It can do, it might not, but we can feel just as lonely around people as well. I don't know about that research that you're highlighting there. It looks very interesting. I know there's also research going on, a lot more now on this topic of loneliness, and there's some work going on at Exeter University, for instance. That'll be interesting to see.
And Will, as someone that does work the long hours that you've described, and you live in the rural area, how do you try and prevent that isolation and loneliness, and to break those barriers down now?
Yeah, I think Aaron made a really good point about, one of the things certainly about depression is you can be really lonely and isolated even in a crowd. So I mean, I've got a brilliant, amazing wife who I adore, and we have a really brilliant relationship. She's my best friend. I've got 4 great kids. My parents get on really well most of the time. I've got lots of great friends who I'm missing immensely at the moment. But I just felt so lonely. I felt so isolated, and I think a lot of farmers will probably be able to relate to that it isn't just sort of physical loneliness. Yes, a lot of us work on our own on farms, and but that's actually one of the things I like most about farming. I like working on my own sometimes, or being just me and my dad. I quite like that, and I think a lot of farmers do. But when I was depressed, I just felt so lonely. It's hard to articulate it really, but I think everybody will know someone. I mean, our next door neighbour, really good example of this. Just over 2 years ago, our next door neighbour. So this is one of my dad's, not just next door farming neighbour, literally borders our farm. more than a neighbour, also one of my dad's best mates. So I'd known him my entire life. He's about the same age as my dad, and his son is about the same age as me. Kind of guy who was very outgoing. Always, if you went to the local point to point or the local ag show or something like that, was always in the bar. Loads of fun, always smiling, always laughing. And so I knew him very well. We shared farm equipment. Incredibly good farmer, always immaculately tidy farm. Incredibly talented with welding, and he was always making. Every time you went there, he was in the workshop making something. And everything, just everything really. And then a couple of weeks before Christmas 2 years ago, his son, he found him, he'd hung himself in the workshop, and there was no indication that might happen. Nobody knew. And I thought about him a lot this Christmas, and I think about how lonely he must have been. But yeah, nobody knew how lonely he was. And earlier this year, it must have been, I can't remember, it was earlier this year, must have been before the lockdown. This year's 2020 kind of all blended into one another, didn't it? It must have been last winter. His son organised a tractor run. He had lots of old tractors and organised a tractor run in the local community. And they had like nearly 300 tractors there from his farm, and they raised some money for a local charity. And there were so many people there at the farm, and I actually went up into the loft of one of his sheds and took a picture down of the yard of all these tractors, and I thought, oh, geez, Jeff, you should be here. I wish you'd known how much people cared. I wish you'd known how much his grandchildren were running around, young grandchildren. I wish you'd known what hole you were going to leave, in not just with your family and neighbours and friends, but with the entire farming community. And there must be so many people listening who know someone like that, who've been lonely and nobody's realised. And yeah, the big challenge is how do we get through to those? We talk about farming being such a strong community, don't we? It's one of the best things about farming. Certainly, I think it is. Certainly, one of the things that I value most. And yet, so many people in our community are feeling lost and lonely and isolated. So, I mean, I have no answers to that. Only that we can keep chipping away and things like this, and the more people can talk about their own experiences, so that people realise they're not the only one. Hopefully, the more progress we can make.
Absolutely. And I think if anybody wants to put comments of what they do to help themselves, or how they help identify and work with people that they find are lonely as well, then I think we'll look at a way that we can share that anonymously, and just sort of some helpful hints and tips for people that have worked in the past, so we can really start to break down those barriers. But it's a long road ahead, isn't it, for all of us? And there's some great work going on, but I think we need to, there's still a long way to go to make a real difference. So loneliness and that isolation we talked about. One of the other things was the guilt well that you mentioned, and really looking at when people are struggling with that mental health, despite what everything looks like outside. And like you say, you've got your friends, you've got your family, you've got the farm, and really, is there a reason why you're feeling like that? But it is a real common perspective, a problem with people, isn't it? And that losing perspective of what is theirs to feel guilty or not feel guilty about. Aaron, can you explain why people go down that route, and how they can get perspective back over the problems that are there in front of them and the ones they can't control?
Yeah, pervasive and persistent feelings of guilt and shame tend to be a characteristic of conditions such as depression. And the guilt tends to speak to us in terms of, I am not enough. I am not good enough. We heard Will saying that before. I'm not a good enough farmer. I should be doing more. I should be doing better. I'm somehow weak. I'm failing, was Will talking before. I'm sort of inadequate, or, you know, it's my responsibility to be looking after others, to make other people, take care of other people, and I'm not doing that good enough. And I think we all experience that inner struggle to varying degrees. We have that inner critic, that sense that we're never quite enough, we're never quite doing enough. If you're really struggling with almost constant and persistent feelings of guilt, that might be something that's hard to entangle on your own, something that a professional might be able to support you with. But really, managing guilt is about learning to have compassion for yourself, to actually learn to, Will talked about beating himself up, to actually learn to have some compassion for yourself and give yourself a break. Learn to let yourself off the hook. Permission to be human, having a human experience of struggle. Many people here, if we asked them, are you a kind person? I'd imagine most people would reflect and agree that they were. And if we asked, are you a caring and compassionate person? I'd imagine most people would say that yes, they are. But the paradox is, how many of us extend that level of care and compassion that they easily and automatically show to others, to themselves? You know, the harsh way we criticize and talk to ourselves, would we talk to our loved ones, our partners, our children, those closest to us, in that harsh way we sometimes talk to ourselves? So it's about learning to be a bit more compassionate on ourselves, that we're allowed to struggle and we don't have to be superhuman. Other thing I see often is people putting huge expectations on oneself, expectations that you probably wouldn't put on other people. And again, that will fuel the guilt. Learning to say no is often a big one for many of us. You know, learning to say no without feeling guilty, or even learning to say no whilst feeling some guilt and being okay with that. A lot of us, we feel guilty to put our needs into the equation and say no, and end up taking on more and more and becoming overwhelmed. So sometimes it's about shifting your energy towards yourself, and you're focusing on your needs. And just learning to develop that compassion for yourself that you would have for others. And I'm not saying that's easy and can happen overnight.
And how was it in your experience, Will? I mean, you've said about that compassion for others, but you obviously didn't feel capable of giving yourself that compassion at the sort of the worst of the times.
No, not at all. I felt tremendous guilt. I think it was one of the worst things, actually. I felt yes, I felt guilty about letting people down, but I also had this thing where I felt like I had no right to feel like the way I did. So I kept thinking, well, I've got this amazing wife who I love, my kids, my family. I'm doing what I've always wanted to do. I live in a beautiful part of the world, and yet there are so many people out there worse off. You know, I've friends of mine are worse. You know, people whose children are ill, or people who've got terminal cancer, or whatever it may be. You know, the way I was thinking at the time, they're the people who deserve to feel like this. They're the people who, you know, and I felt so, I suppose, so much self-loathing because of that. You know, I just felt so weak and pathetic at the time. You know, I mean, I guess, you know, we're conditioned in farming. You know, we're told you've got to get on with it. You know, especially, you know, with livestock farms, you can't be ill. You've got to get on with it. You've got to go and feed the cattle. There's no one else to do it. You know, and you're brought up in that way. And although I am not by any means an alpha male, as people who know me will confirm, I'm far too in touch with my feminine side, and too much of a nerd for that. But you know, at the same time, I've been chainsawing all day today. I used to play rugby. I like a beer or three with my mates. You know, I suppose you have a certain feeling for yourself where you should be, perhaps, and you know, I felt guilty that I wasn't. I don't know if this is the right way of putting it, but that I wasn't living up to expectations, my expectations of myself and other people's expectations of me. But yeah, that feeling of having no right to feel that way was incredibly strong, and I don't know, but I would imagine a lot of people would be able to relate to that.
I think it is, and it's that common sort of expectation of, and I think as well when we're in a sort of a generational industry where we've maybe taken the farm on from family as well, there's that expectation to hold up what granddad and great granddad produced so many years ago as well, isn't there? So it's sort of just, again, it's another compounding thing that we deal with in this industry. So I think it will resonate with a lot of people out there. We've talked about getting help and helping somebody identify that, and we know that really to have that help is someone else as well, isn't it, but helping you along on the journey. But how do we take those first steps, which are often the most difficult ones out there? Aaron?
Well, that is one of the hardest things, is actually taking that first step. As Will said, you know, that was one of the hardest things that he did in his life, in taking that first step. So, you know, this is really difficult, and it's going to take maybe some bravery and some courage. And maybe sometimes we're lucky to have somebody around us who can nudge us to do that. But, you know, taking that first step is so difficult. But first, obviously, you've got to admit that you have a problem. You have to acknowledge that you've got a difficulty and you can't do it all on your own. And accepting that, that can be humbling and sometimes requires humility. And then being able to be willing to accept help. I mean, that's a big piece for me in my family. People who won't accept help, and the helplessness that I feel, that I can't help those people that won't accept help. Seeking out and asking for help in itself is a huge step. And it can feel like an impossible step to actually take when we're in that low place. So with the sort of feelings we talked about, of guilt, of shame, of self-loathing. So something like that will drain your energy and hope and drive. So taking the first step is often the hardest, and reaching out definitely needs strength and bravery. But taking that first step is an accomplishment to be celebrated. When someone gets in touch with me for help, we really celebrate the fact that they have taken the decision to do that, that they've decided to place their well-being at the forefront of their life and their willingness and want to do that. We also need to find hope, and that's really difficult. Feeling hope in that really difficult place. And there is hope that you can get better, as Will managed to get help and support. There is hope, but sometimes that's one of the hardest things to feel. We really need to dig deep and find that. But there is help out there, and there is hope.
And Will, when you made that step, what actually changed for you to think, actually now's the point? And do you think that you overthought people's reactions before you told people, and was that something that held you back a little bit?
Massively. I mean, Aaron's dead right. It's really hard. It's hard to, I suppose, in farming, you know, we're quite proud people. You know, we don't necessarily like to ask for help. You know, we like to be seen to work hard and be tough, and as some of the things I've talked about, and that sort of asking for help is, it can't be, it's really, really difficult. But I suppose, you know, one of the things that, you know, I hope people can take away from this webinar is that, you know, for me, so I was really, my wife was brilliant. knew she would be. She was incredible. She handled it really well, although it was really hard for her. She was really good with the kids as well. Like, she'd tell them to, because they obviously of an age to know that there's something that was wrong with their dad, and you know, they would come up and give me sort of random hugs, and I realise now that she was telling them to do that, which was important. I knew my mum would be supportive. That was, my mum would support me whatever I do. I mean, she's my mum, and she's a very caring person anyway. But I was really, it was my dad that I was, so, you know, again, not wanting to speak for all farmers, but I would imagine most farmers feel like this. You know, I grew up, my dad was my hero. From as soon as I could walk, I was on the tractor with him, chasing him around the farm. Always wanted to be more like him. We're actually very different personalities, me and my dad. We're rewatching Life on Mars at the moment, and if anyone remembers that from a few years ago, and I'm a bit more like Sam Tyler, and my dad is very much the Gene Hunt character in our relationship. He's more sort of act first and ask questions later. But you know, I was really, I didn't, you know, when you have that relationship with your dad, you don't want your dad to think of you as a letdown or weak, or, you know, that's how I thought at the time. I thought if I tell my dad and he looks at me, you know, he looks at me like I'd let him down, or, you know, that I wasn't good enough or whatever, that would have destroyed me, I think. So I found that really difficult. But the good thing is, and I feel stupid now for thinking that, because you know, when I did tell him, he obviously, you know, he knew that I wasn't myself, and he was really worried about me, as I found out later. But you know, he wouldn't be one to say that, but he was. But what I found was that he, I think telling my dad was probably the hardest thing about it all, actually. But that I needed help, that I was depressed, whatever. But he couldn't have been better. He was amazing. Saw a side to him probably that I'd never seen before. And if anything, it's brought us closer together, much closer together, I'd say. So I suppose where I'm going with this is that as you know, the people around you, if you're lucky enough to have people around you, although it can seem so hard to talk to them and tell them things that really, you know, they love you and they want the best for you. And, you know, if anyone's watching and if they're struggling with this now, or they know someone who is, you know, as hard as it is, telling people close to you or reaching out for help, you know, they just want you to be happy, and they're gonna help you. And yeah, so a friend of mine actually said to me when I was, and I didn't tell many people when I was going through it, but a friend of mine who was really good said to me that when you've got through this, and you will be glad you did, and you'll be stronger and for it. And I didn't believe him, but now I know what he meant. He was someone who'd also been through this, but now I know what he meant, and sort of just that asking for help and getting it, and the love of family and friends and things like that has made such a difference in my life. So yes, as difficult as it can be, it can also, in the end, it can work out pretty well, as it has for me.
That's really good of you to share, Will. I know it's been difficult, and again, we're getting more resonating with the audience as well on the comments, and thanking you for being so honest, and some emotion coming through there as well. So Thank you for sharing. We talk about resilience quite a lot, Aaron, and that you need that resilience. And what does that actually mean for people, Aaron, in the real world?
Well, resilience is about having that willingness and capacity to manage and cope with the stresses of life. So it's about understanding there's going to be good and difficult times, both good times and both difficult times. So life's not always going to feel good. We're not always going to feel happy, confident, energized, and hopeful all of the time. So resilience means, in essence, being able to continue functioning relatively normal in the midst of adversity. It's about having adaptability, as your slide says there. And I say farmers are pretty resilient bunch. They have to be. You know, they have to evolve to be resilient to deal with all the stuff that's thrown at them. But what I do sometimes worry about is there is a tendency maybe to interpret resilience as being about strength, about being strong, about pushing through. Whereas resilience is equally about being able to acknowledge and own our vulnerability, to involve all our feelings. We might feel angry some days, we might feel upset and tearful some days. Sometimes, you know, we might need to admit we're struggling and asking for help. So resilience also involves acknowledging our vulnerability, and meaning that we are able to ask for help when we need it.
That's really useful, thank you. And I think anyone that's on social media at the moment will know that there's a Run 1000 challenge going on between the nations. And speaking to Liz earlier today, the group across the nations, there's over £35,000 being raised now. It's a huge amount, and especially in a year where charities have struggled. So that's going to mental health charities. And if anybody does feel the need to donate after this, it's not why we've done this at all, but if anybody does want to donate after hearing this, then there's lots of charities out there that will benefit and have struggled over the past year. But not only the money, there's 1,200 people on Strava now, all running, little conversations going on and getting the most out of it. So it's not just those health benefits, is it? Well, there's a lot more to it than that. And as a marathon man now, take it running was your resilience builder.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I mean, first of all, yeah, Run 1000, just incredible. Sheena Horner, who started that, she had an idea. It's one thing having an idea to do something like this, isn't it? But putting it into motion and actually getting so many people involved and raising so much money. And she has put a huge amount of time and effort into this, by the way. I mean, she's working serious hours pulling it all together. So, I mean, huge credit to Sheena. I think it just shows about how many people who do want to help and who are conscious of mental health issues as well. As I said earlier, you know, we all know someone who's been through it. So I think everybody just wants to help in a way that they can. You know, and the year, you know, we all know how difficult 2020's been. You know, it's been hard for people. People have been lonely. They've missed being part of something, I think. So I think it's so timely, Run 1000, and yeah, the money that they've raised is so important. Yeah, for me, running, I started running a good few years ago now, for physical fitness after sort of years of young farmers and Harper Adams and sort of too much beer. The year we were getting married, I realized that I needed to lose some weight. If I was going to stand next to my beautiful bride, I started running then. I'd never run before, and been running on and off ever since, really. And very quickly realized that although it's great for physical health, it's also for me, and I sort of fell into this quite accidentally, actually. So I don't listen to music when I run. I just switch off and concentrate on breathing, try and listen to the sounds around me. And somebody said to me not long ago, well, that's mindfulness. And I suppose I hadn't realized that, but I guess it is. So yeah, it's kind of a form of stress relief, I suppose, for me, and it does work. But you know, it doesn't have to be running. It can be anything. It can be just getting together with friends, or going for a bike ride, or a walk, or walking the dog, or just whatever whatever your thing is, train spotting, you know, whatever. It's just coming together with other people and doing something that gets your mind off the day-to-day thing, I suppose. And running has been something that's worked very well for me in that regard.
And Aaron, just to wrap that up, really, I mean, when I've talked about the Run 1000, and I know I've seen it on social media as well, people say, well, running's not for me. What other things do people do for that time out and that break to recharge?
Yeah, so all of these are activities that can help you build up your resilience. So for some people, it's running. Might not be for everybody. Definitely exercise, any form of exercise is always a good stress reliever, as Will says, and we know there's physiological reasons for that, because particularly vigorous exercise where we're raising our heart rate is going to break down some of the stress hormones that accumulate in us and flood our body with the endorphins, which are the molecules within our body which modulate our mood and our stress response. But yeah, it doesn't have to, you know, any small steps that help to you know, improve our well-being, and they don't have to be complicated things. So you know, making sure that we're staying socially connected, making sure we're managing our sleep. Are we eating well and healthily? Having a hobby, maybe, particularly if it's a hobby that incorporates a social dimension, maybe gets us away from the farm or the business or even the family for a while. Taking a break, maybe getting away. I know that's not easy for everybody. It was quite interesting when I was on my Nuffield travels in Finland. There was a national scheme there whereby all farmers had the opportunity to take holiday, and that was supported and subsidized by the government, providing relief workers to allow people to go away. Getting away from the farm or the business, the environment is so important to allow ourselves to have a break and to regain balance. And it has been really difficult this year, I guess, with all the pressures of the pandemic and COVID. Will talked about mindfulness in the sense of mindful running. You know, mindfulness doesn't have to always be about meditation. I remember talking to a farmer who told me how he used to go away to a field and close his eyes and listen to the birds. Another farmer who used to tell me that and during early morning milking, he would leave the milking parlor and go and watch the sunrise. So it doesn't have to be huge stuff. Small steps done repeatedly can help to improve our well-being and build up our resilience. And it's about being creative, finding out what works for you. You know, I'll also say that there's been a lot of social pressure probably during this time of lockdown to fill every moment with being productive and doing things. And you know, sometimes that's okay. You don't have to spend every moment doing something productively and taking up some activity and challenge. It's okay to feel and to be and to get through it and do what you need to do to survive sometimes. That's okay too.
Thank you. I'm going to move on, and I appreciate it's now 8 o'clock, and we did say we were aiming to finish. We've got a few more slides and still some important content, so we're going to carry on. And as we mentioned at the beginning, it is recorded, so if anybody does need to drop out, then you can come back and listen to the second half of it as well. But I think it's important we carry on with what we'd planned. Where does the support come from, Aaron? Everybody's different in the way that they've recognised their illness and the way in that they're going to respond to that treatment. So where do we go for that support once we've got to that stage of needing help?
Well, as you say, I think everybody's different. So firstly, it's great if we can have a social network around us, or we can build a social network. That's what Will said. He had a good social network around him. So for some of us, it might be friends, family members that we feel able to talk to and go to for help and have support. It might be neighbors, church members, people that we know through peer activities. And really, it would be great to have relationships with people where we feel safe enough to be a little more open and have the sort of vulnerable conversations and be real and honest in the way that we're having a conversation tonight, and the way that Will's talking so openly about some of the things that he's been struggling with. But beyond that, you know, we also might need to seek some more professional support, whether it's going to the doctor whether it's getting the support of a mental health professional, counsellor, or as we know, there are plenty of wonderful organisations, support services working for the farming community here in the UK, and they're out there. That help is available to provide support. So it's a case of making use of that support because it's out there, some wonderful people, some wonderful services, and I think we're going to be highlighting some of them as we continue now.
We are. Let's move on to the next slide. So, I mean, as you say, Aaron, there's lots of initiatives out there that have come up for the rural industry in particular, and we've got RSABI. They've got their helpline, and they help in lots of different ways. And I know at the moment they're really encouraging people to look at their sort of emergency plans so that they can take that stress off their life if they've got a plan for what happens if things don't go to plan. Yana have got their amazing tractor facts that we've talked about. They also provide counselling, and you can find the details in the national directory that they've pulled together. Farmwell update their information on a weekly basis on their website, and they also hold information for a lot of people, so please do have a look on that website. There's a Farmwell and a Farmwell Wales, and the FCN are also looking at coping with pressures of farming workshops, and that's not just for farmers, that's for the allied trade. And I know we've got quite a few allied trade members on the call today as well, and they're asking how they can support. So contacting and looking into those workshops would be useful, and all these links we will make sure are available with the webinar recording as well. So, and obviously the share the load that we've mentioned. Will, what were your sort of personal thoughts? What did you do? What have you heard? I mean, you've mentioned your podcast and talking to people that have done similar things as well. What have you heard in the past that has helped other people as well, and yourself, but as others that are different?
Yeah, so I've talked about mental health quite a lot to people on rock and roll farming, and it's amazing actually how many people want to talk about it. So you know, Doug Avery, I guess, is the obvious one that people will have heard of, farmer in New Zealand. And I would urge anyone listening actually to read his book, The Resilient Farmer. It is fantastic, and I guess you know, for a lot of farmers, they might find that useful because it's actually written by a farmer. And I've met Doug; he's a great guy, and his podcast was fantastic. There's others. Stephen Parkinson, I spoke to. I think he was the first actually I spoke to about mental health, and that got a really big reaction. Patrick Joyce, who since passed away. Patrick was amazing, talking about his depression after being diagnosed with terminal cancer. Lydia Slack. Lydia, I love Lydia. She's brilliant. She talked very powerfully about how her sexuality and hiding it from her parents led her to considering taking her own life. And there's lots of others, but every single time we've talked about mental health on the podcast, and this is all down to the guests and their bravery for opening up about it, but I always get messages afterwards saying how much it's helped them. After the Doug Avery interview in particular, I got a very long email from a farmer in Australia, older guy, older gentleman, really long, detailed email, and he said that hearing that podcast saved his life. He said he was that low, and then I think someone had recommended it to him. He'd listened to it, and then he'd reached out for help. And I mean that's all down to Doug, but it just shows that you never know who's listening. And it's the same with this conversation tonight. There might be someone out there who's on the floor now, but listening to this might be enough to urge them to reach out for help. And I think that's just something we can all do, and just to bear in mind that we never know who might be listening. You know, depression is a really lonely place, as we've talked about. Just knowing that others have been there and you're not the only one is really important. You know, and also knowing that others have had it but they've got through it, I think is important, because lots of people have depression. you know, it's very, very common, you know, and having it, you know, as I said earlier, that I was worried that that was it now. I was going to be, well, there's no reason, you know, I hope I never have depression again. I probably won't. I'll probably be fine now. You know, I was in such a bad place, but I got through it, and you know, I'm back now. And you know, in fact, my dad said to me not too long ago, you know, it's good to have you back, son. And you know, it just shows that you can get through it. And I just, you know, I hope if anyone out there is struggling, you know, they do realise that it doesn't have to define you. You know, that period in my life is not going to define me. It's not. You know, and if you know anyone who's struggling, it doesn't have to define them. You know, you can get through it. It's really hard. It's really shit place to be, but you know, you can get through it. And you know, I did, and I'm in a brilliant place now. I'm very happy. Despite everything at the moment, I'm really excited for 2021. So long may it continue.
And I think you might get a few more of those emails after this evening, Will, judging by the comments that we've been getting and how grateful people are for sharing your story. And Susie, you've been sat very patiently in the background, and we've got two other pictures up there of Kuth and Quell. And we've talked already, haven't we, about how talking about the problem and breaking the silence that way is quite hard for people. So I understand this is the reason you've introduced these new services, which are more online and text-based. Do you want to explain what they are and how they help people?
Thank you. Yes, we introduced Quell and Kuth in October last year. As RABI, we've been around 160 years, and we recognise that there are huge challenges being faced by the farming community, and we all need to do more to find help and support for people in the farming community. And conversations like this are fundamental to how we will change attitudes, to normalise these conversations and to start them and to get them rolling, because we all know that, you know, we talk about resilience all the time, but none of us, and we're all human, we can't all be okay all the time. So one of the first services we've introduced is Quell and Kuth. They are online wellbeing platforms. They are completely free to access. If you go onto the RABI website, you can find the landing pages for them, and they give you free access. They are completely confidential, and they contain a whole wealth of information. So they've got articles and forums. There's a lot of content that's tailored specifically to the farming community, but they also have a chat function and also access to professional counsellors. For us, the important thing is that people can access them at their leisure, whenever it works for them, and for as long as they would like, and as many times as they would like. So by no means are we saying that this is the solution, but it's about making support services accessible to people and trying to give people options. And we've talked about how difficult it is to accept that you're having a tough time, and perhaps if people aren't ready to have a face-to-face conversation or even over the phone, the anonymity that having an online service provides, we hope might give some people access to support. And it might be that that's the start of a journey for them in helping them to access for more support. It might be that this is all they need, but for us it's about adding to that basket of support that's available and helping people get what they need, to, you know, admitting that things are difficult shouldn't be seen as a weakness. It should be seen really as a strength, because it is the first step to getting better. And so we need to make things as easy as possible to access for people.
And Susie, just before we move on, do you want to just run over the intended age ranges for both of those as well? We've had a question in about Kuth being suitable for young farmers.
Yes, so Kuth is for 11 to 17 or 18-year-olds, and Quell is for adults. So a lot of the content is tailored to that, and then the content is also updated all the time.
Brilliant. And again, without wanting to miss any of the charities out as well, there's obviously the Mind Your Head campaign that will be going on from the Farm Safety Foundation in February as well, as we've listed the other ones. So final question from me to the three of you. We've obviously made big progress, and open conversations like you've been willing to give us tonight are going to start that conversation for more people as well, and hopefully that'll be something that carries on. But what do you think we need to do from your perspectives for the future to make this really a normal conversation and not something that we have to put that sort of special attention to? It should be just part of the industry. Have you all got one idea? Aaron, do you want to start? Oh, we nearly got to the end. Aaron, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'd like to say that, as people have highlighted tonight, the help is available. There's support out there. You know, use it. Don't feel shy, afraid to use it and get help. Getting help is a brave and courageous thing to do, and you can get through it if you're struggling, as Will's story demonstrates. Ask yourself, what are small steps that I can do to support my health and well-being? Small steps. And if you're doing well, look out for others as close to you who might be struggling and might appreciate some support as well. Do your best to stay connected. I don't think I answered your question there, because I think I listed about 4 things. Take that first step. Take that first step, and the next, and the next.
And Will?
Yeah. So I don't have any answers. My worry, I suppose, is that for those of us who are active on social media or involved in wider industry things, we are now, I think, becoming quite used to this conversation. It's becoming quite normalized. But there are a lot of people in the farming community, the majority probably, on social media. We're an older industry after all. I think this year's been very difficult. A lot of, obviously, agricultural shows were cancelled. That was traditionally sort of for a lot of farmers, that's their holiday. Livestock markets have either been closed or they've only been drop and go. So where people, I know livestock markets are a hugely important part of the local community here. For a lot of people, that's the only time they see other people. So I think it's been really difficult. So I think that is the challenge. How do we get to those people? That's something that I think we need to think about a lot, and think we need to talk about. And I know there's brilliant work being done by the farming charities, as we've talked about. But I think we just need to bear that in mind. There are a lot of people out there who we need to reach out to, and I think that's something we all need to focus on and think about.
Susie?
I think it's about admitting that we're human, that we're not invincible, that nobody's okay all the time, and that's okay. There's firstly that, and the second thing, I think we need to keep this conversation going, but I think a lot of the language is a big switch off, a turn off for people. So talking about mental health, I think sometimes people will automatically stop listening because they don't want to talk about it. So I think we've got a lot of work to do about finding different ways of describing it that make it more accessible to people and make it okay to talk about.
That's brilliant. And if there's anybody in the audience with any ideas, then please do, again, type into the question box, because there's a mental health roundtable that we held last year in April, I think it was, and that led to the webinars we did over the summer. We're planning on meeting again in March, and that really brings all the charities and the retailers together to look at how we can start to normalise this conversation across the supply chain. So if there's any ideas that we can take to that roundtable, then please do share with them from the audience. So our last slide, our second to last slide for the evening, is the big survey. Susie, RABI launched another great initiative this week, last week, sorry. Do you want to explain to everybody what it's about and how they can get involved?
So just to give a little bit of context first, Big Farming Survey, I talked about how as RABI we're looking to evolve our services. We want to provide better, more support to more people within the farming community. But in order to do that, we need to really understand what the challenges are, how they impact on people, and therefore how we can tailor our support and future support by ourselves and the rest of the sector to better meet the needs of the community. And in order to do that, we've launched the Big Farming Survey, because there was a lot of really fantastic research out there, but most of it tended to be either much smaller regions or within a very sort of specific topic. So we've launched the largest ever survey of its kind across England and Wales. We have an ambitious target of 26,000 responses. So we will be looking for responses from the whole of the farming community. That's farmers, farm workers, wives, partners, and adult children. And this is looking at physical well-being and mental well-being, and also the health of farm businesses, because we understand that there might be isolated difficulties in any of those sections, but equally it's frequently the case that a lot of those problems are across all parts of the well-being, both physical, mental, and farm businesses. And if we can get a true picture of that, it's where we can use as a base to work with the other organisations and farm support agencies out there to better meet the needs of our community and provide support. So I would urge everyone, please, to get involved. This is really your chance to give farming a voice so that we can better understand what things look like in the community now, what are the challenges, how are people feeling, and also therefore so that we can tailor a better support structure. It is available in English and in Welsh, and it's in print and online. So a lot of people will have received printed copies to their farms. We've also had fantastic support across the sector and industry. So it's going to be in, and I know it is at the moment, in NFU, British Farmer and Grower, Farming Wales, and Student Farmer. It's in Farming Farmers Weekly and Farmers Guardian, and it's also going out in CLA Land and Business. And lots of organisations will also be promoting the online link. If you go onto our website, www.rabi.org.uk/Big Farming Survey, you can get a link straight to the form, as I said, in English or Welsh. You can also email to get a printed copy. So please take part. This is our chance to really help frame the future of support, and the findings will be shared across the industry, because while we are RABI commissioning this, it's really important that as a sector we work together to support our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Susie. Just one question. What about Scotland?
Sorry. So we have a sister charity, RSABI. So they operate up there. They've done quite a few of these surveys themselves, but we as an organisation operate across England and Wales. So it's those areas that we're looking at particularly.
Okay, brilliant. This is the last slide really, and what we want to do is just put up those contact details, telephone numbers, websites, etc. We are going to provide a lot of links when we put the recording out as well, so please don't worry that you haven't had time to scribble anything down. But I think really what's left for this evening, and we have run over, and I can only apologise for that, but I think it's been worthwhile, is a big thank you to Aaron for that professional advice, and Will sharing that journey. It's been emotional for you, we've seen that, but it's been emotional for an awful lot of our listeners as well, and I think you've done an awful lot of good starting that conversation, and as Susie said, we need to keep it going now and keep it open and honest, and Susie, thanks for sharing and setting up that really important RABI initiative, which will help us in the future as well. Is there any last points any of you want to add before we sign off?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think you've mentioned it before, but I'll have to say it again as a trustee. of the Farm Safety Foundation that next month will be the Mind Your Head campaign. So please look out for the Mind Your Head campaign if you're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that type of thing. Please engage with the campaign, hashtag Mind Your Head, and please retweet. Please give your thoughts and support to the campaign.
Thank you, Aaron. Will, have you got anything else you'd like to add?
Not really. I think I've said enough, Tess. No. Thank you for asking me to do this. Yeah, I've said it all, but yeah, thank you for asking me to be involved. I think it's and well done to everyone at HDB, everyone who's been behind organising this, because you know, the more we can have these conversations, the better it's going to be for all of us in the industry. So well done, and thank you.
Thank you. Susie, anything to add?
All I would add is that, you know, we've got lots of logos on the screen here. There's lots of organisations out there. But while we all operate confidentially, so we maintain people's confidentiality when they come to us, there is lots of support available. Nobody will share your details without you giving permission. But equally, if you do give your permission and don't feel like you have to make sure you go to the right charity, we all work together all the time. No one will share your information without your go ahead. But the important thing is that you make a call, because once you start that journey, we're all there to help.
That is brilliant, Susie, and that was on my list of notes and I've forgotten to say it, so thank you very much. That's really important, and I think all that's left for me, apart from a thank you to all of you for hanging on in there as well and listening. It's been a great audience, and I said the comments that have come in, we will spend some time looking at those and how we can share some of the information confidentially, obviously anonymously, but that we can get that useful information out to the rest of you. And I think really from me, the best thing anyone could do tomorrow is pick up the phone and speak to someone that they haven't spoken to for a little while, because you don't know how much that call will mean to somebody, especially under the circumstances today. So with that in mind, good night everyone, and thank you very much for listening.